Until she stepped out of her car, it was difficult to imagine herself as a stranger trying to go back. But the minute she put her foot down onto the familiar sidewalk in front of her old house, it was suddenly so surprising, so odd a combination of 10 years gone and yet still present in her mind, that she had to turn and rest her hand upon the side of the car to steady herself. Joyce Richards, she thought. Little Joyce Richards, not Mrs. Jed Duncan at all. She felt wary of going too close to her old house, although she had been anxious to see it again. Perhaps if she came within its reach, it would capture her again and never let her go this time. Or perhaps it was only because she was embarrassed about being seen by people looking out their windows and telling one another, "There's Joyce Richards come back. Thought she was doing so well in the city." The sight of the house had reminded her of Mrs. Random, so she turned on the sidewalk and started up the path to the house next door. Once on the overgrown little path with Mrs. Random's house ahead of her, she realized at last that this was indescribably real, and it seemed to her for a moment that perhaps all this time she had been living in unreality and waiting to awaken here again, where things were solid and the colors of the sky and the flowers and even the path were actual, real, unfaded. The door of the house was blue, and she thought that for years she had not known how blue that color could truly be. Going up the path, she almost tasted the richness of color and form, and stopped, which she could never remember having done before, to look at and finally touch a rose which bent slightly toward her and gave back to her touch a strong and soft pressure. She bent to see if it smelled as she remembered roses ought to smell, and it was heavy, rich, and lovely. Even the white doorstep amazed her eyes, and the knocker, had she ever seen another one like it, was possessed of an actual weight of its own, so that it fell back from her hands and crashed loudly in the still morning. Waiting on the shiny doorstep, was there city dirt on her shoes to soil its whiteness? She listened to the odd, echoing house inside, and thought that within the city there was never any sense, even though people lived so close together, of that intimate knowledge of walls and floors and ceilings. And she remembered the distant sharp sound of voices in another room when she was a child and supposedly asleep in bed. She heard a footstep inside, and then the door opened. "Hello," she said, wondering at the sound of her own voice. "It's Mrs. Random, isn't it?" "Yes." The eyes were not precisely suspicious, wary, rather, as of one who had dealt with personable salesladies and been taken in by supposed bargains. "I'm Joyce Duncan. I used to be Joyce Richards." "Yes." "Don't you remember me?" "No." "I used to live next door." The information was taken in and discarded. "Did you?" "I used to play in your yard." Desperately, she was spending information she had meant to use sparingly, dwelling on each remembered moment, hoping Mrs. Random might help her reconstruct her lost childhood. "Don't you remember?" "So many people." Mrs. Random waved vaguely at the house next door. "Can't remember everyone, you know." "Well, I remember you." She looked again at the clean house dress, pink, imprinted with thousands of small flower sprigs, and thought that in that long-dead time Mrs. Random had worn either this or one astonishingly like it, and that the same wisp of white hair had been lying against her cheek for all these years. Had Mrs. Random, she wondered, then been this vague-eyed creature, hiding nervously behind her own door? "When my mother was sick, you brought us a little roast chicken, and you came over when my father died," she said unwillingly. She was forced into this conversational coin. One had always collected news of deaths and miscarriages and broken legs for Mrs. Random's pleasure. She thought deeply. "I had pneumonia," she added.